Rocket, they're running for their lives. Origin, destroy Rocket's Nexus.
And the first kill of the fight goes down. Nuke Dog is out of there. Camera shot. That big threat is dead. And now Forgiven is left to run over the team. He has no ultimate, he has no carries.
And there's so little Fnatic can do.
Unicorns of Love are just beating them up and taking the lunch money.
They're going all in for this one. About time!
Welcome to week 4 of the European LCS here in Berlin, Germany, where you see Fnatic looking at the flag wall, looking to replicate past success, of course, in this split. And their Vitality with Nuke Duck looking all business, taking care of some business on his phone before the game. And Elements setting up on stage as they will be taking on Vitality in our first game of the day. And as you can see, things are downright euphoric here in the battle arena as Elements and Vitality take to the stage for our first game of the day. Hello, I'm EpicSkillshot, joined on the analyst desk by James Stress O'Leary and Mitch Kreppel-Voorspools to break down our first few matchups of the day. And if we take a look at the standings with a third of the split behind us, the LCS newcomers, obviously, G2 Esports share the #1 spot with H2K. Vitality and the UOL are right behind them and at the bottom of the table. Unfortunately, 0-6 for the Giants coming into week 4.
4 weeks into the LCS now, and gone are the old guard. No Fnatic, no Origin at the top right now. Firmly H2K and G2 are looking like the best squads we got.
Yeah, and those are some of our expectations being like shattered. You know, we thought Fnatic and OG would finish pretty high at least. But then looking at the bottom of the table, this is sadly some of our expectations confirmed. Rocket, even though they opened spectacular with the Taric week 1, day 1, ever since it's going downhill, so more Taric please. But Giants, there's 0-6 right now. They're playing, I think, Origin and Fnatic this week, or they have a really tough schedule this week. So they're projected to go 0-8. Then, well, if they don't really improve drastically, they'll go 0-9. And then who says that can't repeat itself? And we may be looking at an 0-18 season for Giants. Hopefully not, but they need to start changing things.
Yeah, let's hope that their substitution, Betonjokke, starts to pay off for them as well. And looking towards today's competition in the visa department, unfortunately, the issues we still have Ryu out for H2K and Selfie in. And on the Unicorns of Love, Diamond is still out, and Rudy has joined as a full-time member of the team.
As with last week, there have been changes, though, that aren't to do with visa issues, and that is in the Rocket camp. Tabs has come in. Former Elements AD carry has replaced Sophia on that lineup for this week.
Yeah, pretty interesting, to be honest, to see Rudy make it to the LCS. One of the players I would have not expected to make it here, but he's been a consistent high-ranked challenger player overall. If you watch a lot of European streams and solo queue, you will definitely know who Rudy is. If you don't, he will very often announce his... not departure, but his arrival, his presence and his arrival in all chat by the phrase, "Hi, it's Rudy." So I'm excited to see the face behind the player, at least.
Well, we'll find out how all those rosters actually adapt in this week. But first up, it'll be Elements versus Vitality, then Giants versus Fnatic, followed by our match of the week between G2 Esports and Origin. What a clash.
Yeah, that's going to be a fantastic match where Origin is on the up and up. They're 3-1 in their last 2 weeks. Well, guess what? So is G2 Esports overall. So that's going to be a very interesting match here for our match of the week. TriCast 2, it's going to be exciting. Exciting. I don't know. On PTL, Martin went for G2 Esports. I personally think SOAS is going to turn it all around, rain down with a fury of 1,000 baguettes and win that game.
We'll see what happens, and to spice that matchup up, there's also some new stuff to Summoner's Rift, as we'll be playing on patch 6.2. A lot of changes. First up, I might say welcome for a lot of people, nerfs to Tahm Kench.
Yeah, finally some nerfs to the pretty tricky Frogman that we're dealing with in the top lane. Great health a little bit down, so should be a little easier to all-in, if not at least 2v1 and kill him. Glad we see that. I think this kind of kills the Tahm Kench support entirely, unless we're looking at a very single-man like lockdown target composition where you really want to save your AD carry. But other than that, we'll likely still see him in the top lane, but not as high of a priority. Yeah,
it's not going to bench the Kench. There are other changes, however, to itemization when it comes to 6.2. So we saw a lot of Frost Queen's claim. a lot of Frost Queen's claim over the last few weeks. So the changes to Frost Queen's, 50% longer cooldown when it comes to that Spooky Ghost active. But with that also comes changes to AP items we haven't seen in a while. The Morellonomicon, the Athene's Unholy Grail, both have had a cost reduction. And those two changes means that the mid lane itemization is going to change. We're going to see more Morellos, more Athenes.
Possibly also changes in the mastery department and more diversity, seeing how we have a 30% damage increase on the Assassin mastery, and maybe more importantly for the prevalence of Thunderlords, weaker early game and later stronger, obviously, in the late game. That will be very important to see what happens and how much it gets picked up.
Yeah, Thunderlords already saw a bit of a decline in being picked up overall, and right now people will just have to think more whether they think it's worth it. We saw more fervor battle already instead of the Thunderlords, hopefully more diversity and just more well-thought-out choices rather than just, okay, this is OP, I take this Keystone.
Well, if you guys are still confused with Masteries, tomorrow we're going to break them all down at the beginning of the show. But there are other changes when it comes to rework. There's a lot of little changes, but this is one of the bigger ones. Shen has had a minor rework when it comes to some of his abilities. No more Vorpal Blades anymore on his Q. He now has the Spirit Blade instead. The rest of his kit is fairly similar when it comes to his ultimate and the taunt. The big change is his W. No longer shield for himself, now blocks auto attacks in a zone around himself for the rest of your team.
So yeah, that change has actually made it so that Shen is still seen a lot in the top lane, not so much I think as support. I haven't really seen it much recently. I think if it gets picked, it will be a top lane Shen, and it is available this week because it is a relatively minor rework and the core kit is still the same. The gameplay is likely not changed too much. We will still enable Shen and it's playable this week.
Some very interesting things and tweaks to the game, so we want to know what you think. Tweet at LL Esports and tell us what change will come to the meta game with patch 6.2 and why. Be sure to include that hashtag EULCS and we'll go over your responses later today. For now though, it is time to zoom in on Elements versus Vitality as they are setting up for our first game of the day. Let's touch on Elements for 3-3. We were looking to see what they could do versus better teams. Last week, however, they went 0-2, losing to the UOL and OG. The teams that have the teams that Elements have beat rather have a combined record of 3-15. The teams that they have lost to have a combined record of 12-6. So it was somewhat expected that those losses were coming in last week.
And when you speak of those losses and the wins that Elements have had, they are one of the teams that have the most drastic shift when it comes to their time of their game. I mean, Elements have had the slowest wins out of teams and had the fastest losses, so it means they've struggled to beat the teams that they've won against. And in those games where they've been losing, it's just been smash after smash, and they've just been wiped off the map really quickly.
Yeah, and then they're actually playing as a good team too. If you look at mano a mano in every single matchup, I don't think Elements have the talent to really beat Vitality more. If you start looking at the way they play around their top lane, the best performing member for Elements right now is Steve, and he will be shut down against Cowboy and Shook combination because what Shook has been doing seems to be the style that Vitality wants to be going for. You know, isolate the top lane, keep ganking for the top laner right there, shut him down, and that's going to make it really hard for Elements to come out. You can see it right here. Cowboy Shark plays many of these matchups where Shook's just around to snowball. He did it in the match against Fnatic. Remember the Gamsu Olaf being put down 50 CS in the dumpster. He did it against H2K last week, but Oduamne managed to survive and spread his utility to a different part of the map. And I think that is definitely an approach Steve will have to take, see if he can influence the other lanes, because 1v1 will become 2v1, not in his favor, and he will likely die if he keeps fighting it.
Especially when you look at Kawasha's stats and it's like, oh, he's got the highest CS and gold lead at 10 minutes of all top laners. It's like, this could be a tricky matchup for Steve. And one change with 6.2 that we didn't quite touch on is the possibility of tank top laners coming out. In Challenger this week, we saw a bit of Maokai, saw a couple of different champions using that Grasp of the Undying. Steve last year on Maokai did not have a good time. It was only once he got the Echo that it was good, and I don't know whether that tank's playstyle for Steve is going to work up against Kabashad here. He could struggle.
We'll see what happens in this matchup, but for a look at the starting lineups, we're going to head inside and meet our casters, and as we go, Vitality's Kasing tells us how he's not the only support on the team.
I think support jungler actually is also quite important in terms of vision control and knowing when you can go. Because like for support, it's like you have a timer between when you can roam and when you have to be on lane with your AD carry, whereas a jungler can be like anywhere he wants. They're like the moving pieces in like chess, where if they don't move, then everyone else is just slowly gonna die.